What if the love you believed in was a lie? Anna's life was torn apart by the man she trusted with her heart. But when fate brings Ethan into her life, can he heal the scars left by a love that once promised forever? In a small town where secrets run deep, one stormy night changes everything. Will Anna finally let herself love again, or will the past destroy her chance at true happiness? As the walls she's built around her heart begin to crumble, the question remains, can love really conquer all, or is it too late to trust again? Stay with us to discover the shocking twists that will leave you breathless, and don't forget, if you've been touched by Anna and Ethan's journey, hit subscribe right now. You won't want to miss what happens next. We're just getting started on this unforgettable ride. The rain came unexpectedly, a sharp downpour that sent people scrambling for cover and turning streets into rivers. Havenport, a small town nestled along the rugged coastline, had seen its fair share of storms. But this one felt different. It was as if the heavens themselves were weeping for the memories hidden in the shadows of this quiet town. Ethan glanced up as the bus jerked to a halt at the town's only station. He had been traveling for hours, his mind spinning with the mess of his own life. New York was behind him, with its noise and its pretenses, its flashing lights and empty promises. He had left it all behind. The gallery invites, the artist's world of high society dinners and bohemian pretenses. All of it. He had been chasing the wrong things for far too long, and somewhere along the way, he had lost himself. Havenport, with its quiet streets and gray skies, seemed like the perfect place to escape. He was looking for peace, for the solitude he hoped would help him rediscover what he had lost in his art. It was here that he would heal, he thought. Perhaps even find some inspiration again. But standing on the slick, rain-drenched sidewalk, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was running away from something more than just his past. He was running from himself. Ethan stepped off the bus, dragging his suitcase behind him. The small station seemed to echo his loneliness. As he walked down the street, he was struck by the beauty of the place. Havenport wasn't just a coastal town, it was a place where time seemed to stand still. It wasn't the hustle of the city. There was no rush here, just the sound of the wind, the hum of the ocean, and the occasional cry of seagulls. He found a small inn near the pier, its wooden signs swaying in the wind. The inn at the pier. A place to rest, a place to think. He entered and was greeted by a woman at the front desk. She had warm brown eyes and silver streaks in her hair, but there was something in the way she looked at him. Like she saw past his facade, past the tired eyes and the weary heart. "Welcome to Havenport," she said, smiling. "What brings you to our little town?" "I needed to get away," Ethan replied quietly, his voice rough from the journey. "I'm looking for some peace." The woman nodded, as though she understood more than he'd said. "You've come to the right place then. The world here moves a little slower." After checking in, Ethan made his way to his room. The window faced the ocean, and he could hear the waves crashing against the shore. He dropped his suitcase on the bed and stared out into the horizon, watching the rain batter the sea. A part of him felt at peace. But another part of him, the part he'd been trying to silence, felt restless. It was as if the ocean itself was calling to him, urging him to stop running, to face the things he had been avoiding. The following morning, the rain had stopped, though the clouds still hung low in the sky. Ethan ventured out to explore the town, feeling the cool breeze on his face as he walked through the quiet streets. Havenport was a place of contrast, a town caught between the untamed nature of the sea and the quiet, settled life of the people who lived there. He stumbled upon a small bookstore by the pier. The windows were fogged up, and the door creaked as he entered. Inside, the scent of old paper and wood mingled in the air. Shelves were crammed with books, and there was a small counter where a woman was organizing a display. Ethan's eyes flicked to her, and something inside him shifted. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore a simple dress and cardigan, the sleeves pushed up to her elbows. But it wasn't her appearance that caught his attention. It was the way she held herself. There was something quiet, yet strong in her presence. She seemed like she belonged to this town, a part of it, as if she had always been here, like the cliffs and the sea. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her voice soft but clear. Ethan hesitated for a moment before replying. "Just browsing, thank you." The woman smiled faintly. "I'm Anna," she said, her voice carrying a hint of curiosity. "I run the shop. Havenport doesn't get many strangers, so it's rare to meet someone who's new." "I'm Ethan," he replied, "just passing through." Anna studied him for a moment, her eyes sharp despite the warmth in her expression. "You don't look like someone who's just passing through. You look like you're running from something." Ethan froze. He hadn't expected that, especially from a stranger. But something about Anna's gaze made him feel as though she could see right through him. "I'm not running from anything," he said, his voice a little defensive. Anna raised an eyebrow, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Maybe. But Havenport has a way of making you face things you've been avoiding." Ethan nodded slowly, taken aback by her insight. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to Anna than met the eye. There was an aura about her, an energy that both intrigued and unsettled him. "I'll take a look around," he said, his voice softer than before. As he wandered through the store, pulling books from the shelves, Anna continued to watch him from behind the counter. She had a way of observing without intrusion, as if she knew people needed space to open up on their own terms. Days passed, and Ethan found himself drawn back to Anna's bookstore, returning each morning to sip coffee, read, and listen to the quiet hum of life in Havenport. Their conversations were casual at first, about the weather, the books, and the town. But soon, those conversations began to deepen. Anna shared stories about her life, her childhood in Havenport, and how she had chosen to stay in the town to take care of her ailing mother. She had given up her dreams of leaving for the big city, of pursuing her own art, because she had made a promise to her mother. Ethan, for his part, started to open up more about his past. He told her about his time in New York, about his relationship with Sophia, and how he had turned to art as a means of coping with his failures. He confessed that, in many ways, he had lost himself in the process. The art world had consumed him, and in doing so, it had made him forget who he was outside of his paintings. Anna listened with quiet attentiveness, her gaze never judgmental, but full of understanding. She could sense the pain behind his words, the hidden wounds that he was only beginning to acknowledge. It was on one such day, as the two of them sat across from each other in the bookstore, that Anna invited Ethan to take a walk with her along the cliffs. "There's a spot I go to when I need to think," she said. "The view it's something you need to see for yourself." Ethan was reluctant at first. He wasn't used to being so open with anyone, especially not a woman he had just met. But there was something about Anna's presence, something that made him feel like maybe, just maybe, he could allow himself to be vulnerable again. "I'll go," he said, his voice quieter than usual. The walk was long, the wind whipping around them as they made their way up the cliffside. The town disappeared below them, replaced by the vast, empty horizon of the ocean. Anna pointed out the various landmarks in the distance, talking casually, as if they had known each other for years. Ethan found himself listening intently, surprised at how comfortable he felt in her company. As they reached the top of the cliffs, Anna stopped and turned to face him. "This place," she said softly, "it's where I come when I need to be reminded of what really matters. The ocean is constant. It doesn't care about anything. It just is. I think I need that sometimes." Ethan looked out at the waves crashing against the rocks below, the sound of the water so loud it drowned out all other thoughts. He wasn't sure what to say, so he just nodded. "I think I understand," he said, his voice. The air was thick with tension, the kind that clung to the skin like the damp fog rolling off the ocean. Ethan couldn't remember a time when he felt so uneasy, his emotions at odds with one another, a whirlwind inside that wouldn't let him rest. He stood at the edge of the cliff, the waves crashing below him, mirroring the turmoil in his heart. Beside him, Anna seemed unbothered by the strong gusts of wind, her eyes fixed on the horizon, as if the ocean could offer her the peace she so desperately sought. The silence between them had stretched longer than he cared to admit, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was more like an unspoken understanding. Anna had shared so much about her life, about the way this town had shaped her, how she had given up on her own dreams to care for her ailing mother. But there was something more. Something she wasn't telling him. He could feel it. It was there in the way she avoided looking at him directly sometimes, in the moments when she seemed to withdraw, her thoughts drifting far away from the present. There was a wall around Anna, and he was determined to break through it, even if it meant confronting things she wasn't ready to face. Turning to her, his voice was soft but persistent. "Anna, what are you really running from?" She froze, her shoulders tensing as though his question had physically struck her. She didn't turn to face him, but the vulnerability in her posture was undeniable. He knew she had been carrying something heavy, something that had kept her from truly living. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe it was pain. "I'm not running," she replied quickly, her voice more distant than usual, as if she were already somewhere far away. "Don't lie to me, Anna," Ethan said, his words sharper now, though not with anger. Only a rawness that he hadn't meant to let show. "I can see it in your eyes. Something happened to you. Something you haven't told me. And I need to know. Please." For a long moment, she didn't speak. The wind howled around them, a reminder of a storm that raged within her, the same storm that seemed to have been brewing long before he ever set foot in Havenport. Finally, she turned to him, her face pale, her expression unreadable. There was a pain in her eyes that made his chest tighten, a weight that seemed to press on her every word. "I was in love once," she began, her voice low, "with someone who promised me forever. We had dreams, Ethan. A future. A life together. But I was stupid enough to believe it." She closed her eyes as if the words were too difficult to say. "He left. He walked away without so much as a goodbye. He didn't even have the decency to explain. I was left with nothing." Ethan's heart sank. He knew this story already. It was a story of abandonment, of betrayal. But hearing it from her, feeling the pain in her voice, made it real in a way he hadn't expected. "I thought I could move on. I thought I could be strong," she continued, her voice faltering. "But it broke me. It broke me in ways I don't even know how to explain. And now, every time I feel like I'm getting close to someone, every time I start to trust again, that old fear comes rushing back. What if I love again, and it's just as worthless as the last time? What if he leaves me too? I'm not strong enough to go through that again, Ethan." Her voice cracked on the last word, and before she could stop herself, a tear slipped down her cheek. Ethan's heart shattered at the sight of it. He reached for her, pulling her into his arms, holding her tightly, as if he could shield her from the ghosts of her past. The storm in the distance seemed to grow louder, but in that moment, it was their own storm that mattered. Raw, real, and turbulent. "I won't leave you, Anna," he whispered, his breath warm against her hair. "I swear I won't. You don't have to be afraid. Not with me. I know what it's like to lose yourself in someone else, to let them define who you are, but you can't keep living in the past. You can't keep punishing yourself for something that was never your fault. Not with me." She trembled in his arms, and for a moment, Ethan wasn't sure whether it was from the cold or from the weight of everything she was holding inside. But he held her tighter, hoping his words could somehow ease the burden she had carried alone for so long. "I don't know how to trust anymore," she whispered against his chest, her voice thick with unshed tears. Ethan gently pulled her back, cupping her face in his hands, making her look at him. "You don't have to trust me all at once. Just take it one step at a time. Let me show you that not everyone will hurt you, Anna. Let me be the one to prove to you that love can be something good, something worth believing in." Her eyes searched his face, as if trying to gauge the truth in his words. Ethan wasn't perfect. He knew that. He'd been broken, too. But somehow, the fragments of him felt whole when they were together. And for the first time in a long time, he believed that he could be something more than just a man running away from his past. He could be the one who stayed. He could be the one who healed. Anna looked down, her fingers trembling as she wiped away the tears that had fallen. "I don't know if I'm ready," she murmured. Ethan's heart raced at her words. It was a confession, not one of finality, but of possibility. She wasn't shutting him out. Not entirely. "You don't have to be," he said softly. I'm not going anywhere. I'll wait for you, Anna. I'll wait as long as it takes. She nodded slowly, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something else. But before she could speak, a sudden gust of wind kicked up, pulling the words from her mouth and scattering them into the vast, open sky. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm not used to this. To feeling like this. Ethan smiled gently, brushing a lock of hair from her face. You don't have to be. We'll figure it out together. The silence between them was filled with a new understanding. The storm may have been raging in the distance, but here, in this moment, with Anna in his arms, Ethan felt the storm inside him calm. He had no answers, no guarantees, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the wind died down, the sky began to clear, revealing the soft glow of the evening light. The ocean was no longer threatening, but peaceful, the waves lapping against the shore as if the world had found its balance again. I don't know what the future holds, Anna said quietly, but I think I'm ready to try. Ethan smiled, feeling something shift in his chest. He leaned in and kissed her gently on the forehead. I'll be here, he promised. And as they stood there together, looking out over the sea, a new chapter of their story began, one that would be filled with uncertainty, yes, but also with hope. And in the distance, far beyond the horizon, a storm still brewed, but this time, it didn't feel like something to be feared. Instead, it felt like a challenge, one they would face side by side. The days that followed were both a breath of fresh air and a weight that pressed down on Ethan's chest. He found himself living between moments of serenity and bursts of anxiety. The connection he shared with Anna was undeniable, but the air between them was thick with unspoken words, old wounds that hadn't yet fully healed, and fears neither of them could easily voice. Ethan had thought that after the storm on the cliff, after the tears, the promises, things would change. But the truth was far more complicated. As he watched Anna go about her days with a quiet grace, his heart couldn't shake the tension that still lingered between them. Anna was different now, softer, more open, but there was still a distance in her eyes, a hesitance in her touch. She would smile at him, but it wasn't the same as before. It was a smile of someone who was still learning to trust. He knew she had a history, one he would never fully understand, but she had invited him into her world, in her own way. He just wasn't sure if she was ready to let him all the way in. A moment of weakness. It was one of those days when the sky seemed to swallow the sun. The weather mirrored the weight on Ethan's chest, a reminder that not all things were meant to be easy. He sat in the small bookstore again, the air warm but thick with the unspoken words hanging between him and Anna. She was busy at the counter, organizing a stack of old books, but every so often, their eyes would meet, and it felt like an electric charge, a silent acknowledgement of something they were both still afraid to confront. The ringing of the doorbell broke their quiet interaction, and a man walked in, shaking off the rain. Ethan barely glanced up at him, absorbed in his thoughts, until Anna greeted him with a smile. Luke, Anna said, her voice cautious but polite. Ethan's gaze snapped up at the mention of the name, and in that split second, his chest tightened. It was Luke, the man from Anna's past. The one who had broken her heart. The one who had left her with nothing but empty promises. Luke was taller than Ethan, with dark, wavy hair and a confident air about him. He wore a well-tailored coat, his expensive cologne lingering in the air, as though he belonged in a world far removed from the simplicity of Havenport. His eyes locked with Anna's, and Ethan noticed the way her posture stiffened, the way her smile faltered, as if seeing him brought back every memory she had tried to bury. Ethan's breath hitched. He could see the hurt in Anna's eyes, the way she tried to mask it with politeness. He wasn't sure if Anna knew it yet, but the storm had just intensified. Anna, Luke said, his voice smooth but distant, as if he were speaking to someone far removed from his past. It's been a while. Anna swallowed hard, her fingers twitching as she placed the books on the shelf. She forced a smile, but Ethan could see the cracks in it, the way it didn't quite reach her eyes. Yeah, Anna replied, her voice tight, a long while. What brings you here, Luke? Luke's eyes flicked to Ethan, a slight smirk playing on his lips. I was in the area and thought I'd pay you a visit. I know it's been a while, but I wanted to see how you're doing. The words were casual, but there was an underlying tension. Ethan could feel the weight of it, the discomfort in the room, as if the very air had thickened. Ethan stood up slowly, moving closer to Anna, the unspoken message clear between them. Stay with me. I'm sorry, Luke said, his tone changing slightly as he turned toward Ethan. I didn't mean to interrupt your time together. I see you've found someone new. Anna's eyes flicked to Ethan, a brief moment of uncertainty crossing her face. She hesitated before responding. Yes, I have. Luke's expression shifted, an almost imperceptible frown on his face, but he masked it quickly. Well, I'm glad to see you're moving on. I just wanted to check in, see how things were. Ethan could feel his fists clenching, the blood pounding in his ears. The presence of Luke was like a dark shadow looming over them, reminding Anna of the pain she had fought to forget. And yet, there was a part of him that couldn't help but wonder, why was he still here? What did he really want from Anna? The tension was thick in the air. Anna's gaze flickered between Luke and Ethan, but her body language said it all. She was uncomfortable, maybe even afraid. I'm fine, Luke, Anna said, her voice gaining strength. But I think it's time for you to go. Luke didn't respond immediately. He lingered for a moment, his eyes lingering on Anna, but his gaze shifted quickly to Ethan. I see you've made your choice, he said coolly, his words dripping with something unspoken. Just remember, Anna, not everyone will stay when things get tough. Ethan couldn't hold back any longer. He stepped forward, his voice low but unwavering. She doesn't need you to remind her of that, Luke. She's stronger than you ever gave her credit for. There was a flicker of surprise in Luke's eyes before he masked it with a smile. I'm sure, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Good luck with that, then. With that, Luke turned and walked out of the bookstore, leaving the door swinging in his wake. Ethan's heart was pounding, his fists still clenched at his sides. He didn't know whether to be angry, relieved, or something else entirely. But as the door clicked shut behind him, Anna's walls began to crumble. Her breath hitched, and before Ethan could take a step toward her, she turned quickly, rushing to the back of the shop. Ethan followed her, his pulse racing as he pushed open the door to the back room. Anna was standing by the window, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her back to him. Anna, Ethan called softly, his voice laced with concern. Anna, look at me. She didn't turn. Her breathing was shallow, her body trembling, but she didn't speak. The silence between them felt heavy, as though the entire room was holding its breath. Please talk to me, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. I know that was hard for you, but you don't have to go through this alone. She finally turned to face him, and the pain in her eyes nearly knocked the wind out of him. You don't understand, Ethan, she whispered. I don't know how to let go of him. He was the love of my life. He promised me everything, and then he just left. Ethan took a step closer, his heart breaking for her. He reached out slowly, taking her hand in his. Anna, I can never replace him. I can't erase the past. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to fight this battle by yourself anymore. Her eyes filled with tears, and she let out a choked sob. Ethan wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly as she cried. The storm outside raged louder, but inside the bookstore, there was a stillness, a shared moment of raw vulnerability. I don't know how to trust again, she whispered against his chest. I don't know if I can. Ethan cupped her face gently, lifting her gaze to meet his. You don't have to be ready right now. I'll be here for you, whenever you're ready. One step at a time. I'm not asking for your trust all at once. Just let me be here for you. The words hung in the air, a promise, a vow. Anna stared into his eyes for a long moment, her tears slowly drying as she leaned into him. The storm outside still raged, but in this moment, there was only the two of them. For the first time, Anna allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to hurt. The tension had passed, but the storm was far from over. Anna and Ethan stood there, arms wrapped around each other, knowing that the road ahead would be anything but easy. But in that moment, they found something precious, a glimmer of hope. And that, for now, was enough. The storm outside had finally settled into a quiet drizzle, but the silence inside the bookstore felt heavier than it had ever been. Ethan stood there, holding Anna in his arms, feeling the delicate rise and fall of her breath against his chest. She had stopped crying, but the weight of what had just happened lingered in the air. Luke's visit had unearthed things both of them had been desperately trying to avoid. Anna's past, the one she had buried so deep, had come crashing into the present, and Ethan could see the cracks forming in her once impenetrable walls. It wasn't the first time she'd been forced to confront it, but it was the first time she had done so in front of someone who cared. Ethan didn't know what to say. The words that had come so easily before now felt hollow, like a confession he wasn't ready to make. He was torn between wanting to comfort her, to reassure her that everything would be all right, and the undeniable truth that he, too, was uncertain. Their connection was real, but so much of it still hung in the balance, a fragile thread that could easily snap under the weight of the past. Anna slowly pulled away from him, wiping her eyes and letting out a shaky breath. The walls were still there, fragile but present, yet she had let him in, even for a moment. He could feel her internal struggle, the quiet war raging inside her. She wasn't ready to let go of the man who had once been her everything, the man who had broken her heart and left her to pick up the pieces alone. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted you to see me like this. Weak. Broken." Ethan reached out, cupping her face in his hands. "You're not weak, Anna," he said softly, his voice tender. "You're human, and you've been through more than most people could ever imagine." Her eyes searched his face, her gaze filled with uncertainty. "I don't know how to trust again, Ethan. I don't know if I can." Ethan could feel the distance growing between them once more. The wall that had been torn down so briefly now seemed to be rising again, higher and thicker. Anna's fear, her hesitation, was becoming a chasm between them that felt impossible to cross. And he could sense that there was more, so much more, that she wasn't telling him. "I'm not asking you to trust me right away," Ethan said, his voice low but steady. "I'm asking you to let me in just a little bit more. We can take it slow, one step at a time. I'm not going anywhere." Anna's breath hitched, and she closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, there was a glimmer of something in her eyes, a crack in the armor, just enough for Ethan to see the vulnerability she had been hiding. But before either of them could say another word, the bell above the door jingled again. Ethan turned, his body tensing, his protective instincts immediately kicking in. He knew who it was before he even saw him. Luke. Luke stood in the doorway, his presence as commanding as it always was. He was still dressed in the same expensive coat, his dark hair tousled from the rain. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Anna first, then flicking over to Ethan, his gaze cold and calculating. Anna stiffened beside Ethan, and he could feel the shift in her posture. She had retreated again, that familiar wall building higher between them. Ethan wasn't sure what Luke was doing here, but whatever it was, it couldn't be good. Luke cleared his throat, his voice smooth and confident. "I'm sorry for barging in earlier," he said, his eyes meeting Anna's. "But I wanted to explain." Anna stiffened, her shoulders tensing. Ethan could feel the anger rising in her, and he didn't blame her. Luke had already caused enough damage. But Anna, she wasn't the same woman she used to be. Ethan knew that. He wouldn't let her retreat into the past again, not while he was here. Luke took a step forward, his eyes flicking toward Ethan. "I just wanted to talk to Anna," he said, his voice laced with something almost pleading. About us." Ethan stepped in front of Anna instinctively, his chest rising with the adrenaline of the moment. He was done being polite. He wasn't going to let Luke waltz back into their lives and wreak havoc again. "Anna doesn't need to hear anything from you," he said, his voice hard and unwavering. "You already had your chance. You left her. So don't come here trying to play the hero." Luke's expression darkened, and for a moment, Ethan saw the anger flicker in his eyes. "You don't understand," Luke said, his voice tight. I didn't leave her because I wanted to. I left because I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought it was for her own good. Ethan's fists clenched at his sides. He didn't want to hear any more of Luke's excuses. He had no right to come here, no right to make excuses for abandoning Anna. I don't want your explanations, Anna said, her voice quieter, but filled with strength. I don't need them. You left. And that's the end of it. Luke's gaze softened, as though he were trying to reach her. Anna. No, she interrupted, her voice firm. Don't you dare. You don't get to come back into my life and pretend that everything's okay. You don't get to play the martyr when you walked away and left me to pick up the pieces. Ethan's heart broke for her. This was the moment, the turning point. Anna was finally standing up for herself, finally letting go of the man who had caused her so much pain. But it wasn't just about Luke anymore. It was about her, about what she was willing to accept. And she was done with the lies. She was done with being the victim. Luke's face fell, and for a brief moment, Ethan could almost see the regret in his eyes. But it was too late. He had made his choice, and now it was time for Anna to make hers. I'm sorry, Luke whispered, almost too softly for Ethan to hear. But I had to let you go. Anna took a deep breath, her eyes hardening. Then you should have never come back. Luke stood there for a moment, as if waiting for something. Then, slowly, he turned and walked out of the bookstore without another word. As the door clicked shut behind him, the room felt suddenly quieter, as if the world outside had paused. Anna stood frozen for a moment, staring at the spot where Luke had been. Ethan could see the weight of the moment in her eyes, the relief and the sadness, but also something else. There was finally a sense of freedom. Ethan stepped forward, his hand reaching for hers. Anna, he said softly, his voice almost a whisper. Are you okay? She turned to him slowly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she met his gaze with no hesitation. The walls that had been so carefully constructed around her heart began to crumble. Slowly, gently, she nodded. I'm okay, she whispered, her voice raw but real. I think I finally am. Ethan pulled her into his arms once more, holding her tightly as if to shield her from the past, from all the pain she had carried alone for so long. This was their moment, the moment they both needed. The past could no longer haunt them. The future, uncertain as it was theirs to shape. And as they stood there together, holding each other in the quiet aftermath of everything that had just unfolded, Ethan knew one thing for sure. No matter what came next, they would face it together. The storm had passed. But in its wake, there was something far more powerful. A new beginning. The seasons had changed in Havenport, as they always did. The once brutal winter storms had softened into gentle spring showers, and the air was fresher than it had ever felt. The world around Anna and Ethan had transformed, but it wasn't just the weather. It was them. The quiet, slow-moving town had witnessed something incredible unfold. Two people, broken in their own ways, had found each other and healed in ways neither thought possible. It was a typical morning when Ethan found himself standing by the window of the small art gallery they'd opened together, the soft hum of the ocean in the distance. The sky was overcast, as it often was in Havenport, but the rain had stopped. For once, everything felt still. The world seemed to hold its breath, just as he did every time he looked at Anna. She was sitting at the counter, lost in a book, the sunlight filtering through the window and illuminating the strands of her hair. She had that look about her, the look of someone who had learned to love again, who had rediscovered herself, and in doing so, had become the woman she was always meant to be. Strong, resilient, beautiful. He had never been more in love with her than he was now. It wasn't the passion of a love at first sight, nor the yearning of two souls aching to be together. No, their love was something deeper, something more profound, a love that had been built slowly, over time, through every shared moment of laughter, every moment of pain they had endured together, every tear and every smile. It was the kind of love that wasn't afraid to confront the truth of their pasts and embrace the uncertainty of the future. Ethan turned from the window, his heart swelling as he walked toward Anna. He stopped just in front of her, leaning down to kiss the top of her head. Penny for your thoughts, he asked gently, his voice low but filled with affection. Anna smiled up at him, her eyes lighting up. Just thinking how lucky I am, she said softly. How lucky I am to have found you. Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. He had never felt so certain about anything in his life. I'm the lucky one, he whispered, pulling her into his arms. They held each other in silence for a long moment, as though the world had paused just for them. There were no more fears, no more doubts. Only this quiet moment, this peace they had fought so hard for. But as the minutes passed, Anna pulled away slightly, her eyes searching his face. Ethan, there's something I need to say. His heart skipped a beat, worry flickering for a moment, but it was quickly replaced by anticipation. He had learned to listen to her, to trust in the spaces between her words. Whatever she had to say, they would face it together. What is it? He asked, his voice gentle but steady. Anna took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I think it's time for us to take the next step. To stop holding back. To really make this our life. Together, no more shadows, no more secrets. Ethan's pulse quickened. He already knew what she was asking, what they both needed. Are you saying, he began, the words barely a whisper. Anna smiled, her face glowing. Yes. Let's make this permanent. Let's build a future that we can be proud of. Not just here, but everywhere. Together. Ethan felt a flood of emotion rise within him, and for a moment, everything around him, the bookstore, the gallery, the town of Havenport itself, seemed to disappear. All that mattered was Anna, the woman who had taught him how to love again, the woman who had shown him that love wasn't something that happened overnight but was built over time, through trust, patience, and understanding. I love you, Anna, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I want nothing more than to spend the rest of my life with you. Anna's eyes sparkled with joy. Then we'll do it. Together. It was the kind of moment that would stay with them forever. The world outside may have been unpredictable, the future uncertain, but in that moment, they knew they had found something precious, something that would endure through the storms and the sunshine alike. A year had passed since that day in the bookstore, and the world seemed to have settled into a rhythm, a new beginning. Ethan and Anna had taken the plunge, opening a second gallery in the heart of the city, but it wasn't just about business. It was about what they had built together. The new chapter of their lives had begun, one that was filled with art, love, and shared dreams. Their relationship had only deepened, strengthened by every challenge they had faced. They had worked through their fears and found a sense of balance, a mutual respect that allowed them to grow as individuals, while never losing sight of the love they shared. On the morning of their one-year anniversary, Ethan woke up to find Anna already awake, her eyes bright as she watched the sunrise. I've been thinking, Anna said, her voice soft and playful. What do you think about taking that trip we've always talked about? To the coast of Italy. Ethan chuckled, his heart light. I think it's a great idea. As long as you're with me, I'm ready for anything. Anna's smile deepened as she reached for his hand. We've come a long way, haven't we? Ethan squeezed her hand. We have. And I wouldn't change a thing. Together, they watched the sun rise over the horizon, the sky painted in shades of pink and gold. It was a new day, a new adventure, and it was theirs for the taking. The past was behind them, and the future stretched out before them. Unwritten, but full of possibility. That evening, as they prepared for their trip, Ethan sat down on the couch with his phone in hand. He opened the YouTube app and glanced at the channel they had created together. It had started as a simple hobby, sharing their journey with the world, but now it was growing. They had inspired so many people with their story, with their love, their art, and the way they had overcome the obstacles life had thrown at them. He smiled, realizing that the journey wasn't just about them. It was about sharing their story with others, inspiring people to believe in love, to fight for their dreams, and to never give up. As the screen flashed with a message about their new video, Ethan paused. A thought crossed his mind, one he hadn't fully voiced yet. Anna, he called to her, a playful smile tugging at his lips. She turned from the kitchen, raising an eyebrow. What is it? Ethan grinned and held up his phone. Before we go anywhere, we need to ask our followers for something. Anna raised an eyebrow. What's that? Ethan looked directly into the camera, his voice sincere and warm. If you've enjoyed our story, our journey, and the love we've shared, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's because of all of you that we're here today, and we can't wait to share even more of our story with you. Thanks for being part of this with us. He smiled as he clicked the subscribe button himself, and Anna joined him, her laughter filling the room. As they walked out the door, hand in hand, ready to start the next chapter of their adventure, Ethan realized that the love they had fought for, so raw, so real, had brought them here. The storms had passed, and now they were ready for whatever the future had in store. Subscribe now, because every love story deserves a happy ending. The story of Ethan and Anna is a testament to the power of love, perseverance, and healing. The emotional journey of two people who had lost everything and rebuilt their lives together serves as a reminder that love is never easy, but it is always worth the fight. If you've been touched by their story, don't forget to subscribe and join them as they continue their journey, sharing even more heartfelt moments, lessons, and adventures. Your support means the world to them. Thank you for being part of this incredible journey. Subscribe now. This ending brings the story to a satisfying conclusion, filled with emotional growth, a sense of closure, and a hopeful outlook for the future. It also incorporates a gentle, heartfelt request for viewers to subscribe, tying the story to the theme of shared journeys and community. Would you like to adjust or expand on any particular